Hello, this is Rosemary Connolly, and I am here at Miss Billion Art League with Mimi Galligan, who is a potter extraordinaire, and we're going to be interviewing her today and asking her about what she does with her art. So, hi Mimi.
Hi Rosemary, thanks for coming by.
My pleasure. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Oh, first time I had classes in pottery was at the Delaware Art Museum, and the year was the year of the bicentennial, 76. Now, I was teaching at the time, and so I was just doing classes, pretty much the kind that we offer here to get started. And I just got started, and I would have to stop because I had a day job, one thing and another. And as time went by, I would take classes here for 6 weeks, there for 6 weeks, in Maryland at the Torpedo Factory in Alexandria. And I'd always look at the people beside me and go, oh, they're good. They can do big bowls. And they were all retired people. I thought, aha, that's the key. Keep doing it until you're retired, and then you can really get into it. And I did. I would have to stop for 2 years, then go back for 6 weeks and stop for 2 years. But I loved it. It just was what the clay could do. I just absolutely love clay. And I come from a family of artists. My sister's a painter, my brother's a writer, but I loved clay. So 2001 is when my husband set a studio up for me in our garage in Vermont. And that's when I formed Underhill Pottery, because we lived in Underhill. And if you're in Vermont and you're in any kind of a craft, it's just like you're in heaven. People are so generous in helping you learn and giving you tips and working with you. So I was taking lessons at the Vermont Clay Studio. And up in Vermont, they have fabulous teachers because they're just fabulous potters. So I eventually was juried into Vermont Handcrafters and did shows, sold up there, and I loved it. And I've been loving it ever since.
And has your practice changed over time?
Oh, tremendously.
Awesome.
I would say I didn't form a business and consider myself a potter until 2001 up in Vermont. And I would explore different kinds of clay. The places where I was working would influence it very much, because then I was no longer working in Washington, D.C., 8 days a week as you do when you work in D.C. And so up there, we lived in the mountains. We lived 5 miles from a stop sign. We were up a dirt road, and huge Mount Mansfield is right in front of me, and there were valleys all around. So my bowls started taking on that look. The bowls were getting larger and wider, and they would have color around the rims that would flow into the valley of the bowl. And I was doing this, but not consciously. It wasn't until one day I was walking back from the driveways, just walking, and you look around and you realize you're in the mountains and you're in a place with valleys all around. That I realized, now I know why my clay looks this way. Now I know why the work looks this way.
Right.
So when I came back down here to Delaware, instead of doing the dark red clay, which is I was using up in Vermont, I went to colors that are more, that are lighter, that are more like the sunshine. We get so much light here. So I started using white clay, and I started using tan clay, because that's the light that's here.
Right, responding to the environment.
I respond to the environment, and I don't do it consciously. It's just...
That's wonderful.
It just happens. And I usually figure it out after I've been doing it for half a year.
Yeah, I can see that. Mimi, can you talk a little bit about your process?
I love making bowls. They're not the only thing I make, but I love bowls. And once you can make bowls, you can go off in any direction. I'll go off and I'll make colanders, sieves, planters, because it's a basic throwing. I like throwing perhaps even more than hand building. Hand building, I think, can be very creative, and you can go off at any direction. but I keep going back to bowls. They're just so, I think it's something about being female with bowls. It's the shape of the bowls, our bodies.
It's a vessel.
It's a vessel. It is. So I'll start with bowls, and then I'll go off and I'll try some glazes over here, and then some different colors and different shapes, and I will tweak the edges. I'll make them very different, but that's the basis of it.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. Are there themes? Now you talked about the mountains in Vermont, but are there themes that repeat throughout your work?
Sometimes by themes. Can you use another word instead of theme?
I guess the inspirations for
Yes.
different
Sure.
pieces?
The inspiration. It could be changing seasons.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the music I'm listening to. It could be, I have a commission to do X, Y, Z, so I'll start with that X, Y, Z, then that will go off and I'll do 3, 4, 5. It's best to work in series, no matter what you're doing. Sort of like waffles, you can always throw the first one away. And with clay, it's that way too. You get the muscle memory, you listen to music, you don't think about it that much. But I do like to be precise enough that I'll measure the clay and I'll take notes of it. I'm using a 3 pound, I'm using a 2 pound, a 1 pound, a 5 pound. And because I'm going to want to do something with that and repeat it, I don't like to repeat the same piece. It has to be a little different each time. And that's my challenge when somebody says, I want you to do what you did before. No, it's not going to be what I did before. Thank you very much. I mean, I'll get close to it, but it's not going to be.
You were telling me once that it's a kind of a surprise what the glazes are going to look like when they come out of the kiln. Did I understand that correctly?
Sometimes if they're brand new, or if it's a new clay, you work to try to get the result you want. And I used to watch my sister paint, and she would work at a canvas and work on a canvas and work on a canvas, and finally she'd step away. She says, this is what I want. Looking at it, she would say, this is what I want. And I said, well, that's nice for you, but I will go through this stage, and then this first firing, which is a bisque firing, and then I'll glaze it, and then I'll fire it again. So it can be 3 weeks to 4 weeks from the time I begin to the time I see the finished product.
Wow.
And so I open the kiln at the end and I go, wow, this really worked well, or not so much.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Yeah. What are the biggest challenges you've had in your work?
Time. I would love to have just simply have been a ceramic artist, potter from the beginning, and that was not possible. And so doing it part-time and not doing it full-time until I was in my 60s, I think that was the challenge. And now that I'm so involved with the Art League, which I love, I feel like, okay, here I met my tribe.
Yes.
I love the Art League. I love the people here. I love the stimulation. But then there's a lot to do that's not on the wheel. When I had my own studio at my house, I can get up in the middle of the night and go out and check on the clay. How's it doing? Is it dry? What does it look like? Do I need to foot it now? And here I need to come back and forth from where I live to this is my studio now. So that's a challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Mimi, can you describe the feeling that you have when you're creating?
It varies tremendously. It varies with what's happening in the world, what's happening in my life. There have been times, like every other human, I'm not, we're all the same, of great sorrow or grief. And I finally get back to the wheel after a long time. And I probably don't save those pieces. It's just an exercise. If you're doing piano, you might do the scales or whatever. And then I remember working at Absalom Jones Community Center in Wilmington. And the United States went to war at the time. And that bothered me. So I did a lot of small, hard little pieces. When I feel good, I just do big bowls that are just. So it depends.
Yeah. On your
On what's happening in the world, what's happening in my head, what's happening in my life. It's all going to be reflected in the pieces I can make, whether they're going to be loose and nice or whether they're going to be tight and angry. Or, yeah.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Practice. Practice, 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 practice,
What
practice.
advice you would give to someone just starting out?
Enjoy it, have fun with it, learn enough so that you can then take yourself to the next level. Learn enough so that you will not hurt yourself, your wrist, your back, etc. Learn the basics and just keep practicing. Go at your own pace. Don't worry about doing the biggest bowls or the best. Go to museums, go to magazines, meet with potters, talk about, like you can talk about mug handles for an hour at least and more.
Right.
Just mug handles. And we get together with other potters and we'll just talk about mug handles.
Yeah.
And
That's
that clears a room real fast. Why don't you come on over and look in the kiln? It's loaded for what's called a bisque fire. The bisque fire is, this actually is just dried mud. And this is some nice work in here. It's going to be fired to about 1800 degrees. After it's fired at 1800, and that will take about 48 hours before I can open the kiln again. It's going to come out looking like this. Pink. Not going to be pink. Now, at this stage, it needs to be glazed. So people will glaze it, which is essentially glass. It's a liquid glass, and after it's glazed, it will get fired again. That's the second firing. The glaze firing is going to be about 2300 degrees, and when it's finished, this is what it looks like. So that's the firing process.
Mimi, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to show us around the pottery studio today. It's eye-opening and so interesting, the whole process that you go through, and you clearly know your stuff.
Thank you so much for being here. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much. And I'm going to steal this one.